I, Philip Joseph here.
I would like to be judged as being the Prime Minister, not being judged as being part of a government.
We came into government that we had a manifesto and a vision and mission that had been approved by my party, by the highest body.
Basel 11 has not been in existence. 50 was...
Giant getting bazooka. You spraying big on to knock out mosquitoes?
I have never had a joint account with anybody in my life. Not my ex-wife, not my children, nobody. And I will refer that to the Privileges Committee.
What about the culture of people getting into office and not being effective?
What people become Prime Minister of St. Lucia have been the most ready.
Let's do it this Wednesday, because if it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live.
A very good evening to you. Welcome to another edition of Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television with me, Timothy Polion. We go up until 10 o'clock this evening, at which time we'll be concluding with the clip that peaked. Between now and that time, we're focusing on a range of issues, including the construction sector, as well as the Minister of Youth and Sports reacting to claims that this year there will not be any school sports in St. Lucia. And also, we continue to focus on matters relating to health, in particular the operations of the OKEU Hospital. But first, let us hear from Infrastructure Minister Mr. Stephenson King, who participated in the opening of a contractor symposium today. And among issues of concern to him is quality and standards in the construction sector.
I have looked at the agenda, and I'm also proud to see the first item on the agenda, which will be addressed by the Chief Engineer, and that is the issue of project management. In many instances, and I really hope that along the way, we will really organize a session for what I call petty or micro contractors who really need that guidance and counseling as they immerse themselves into the construction industry. What we have today is an industry that many are entering without formal training or formal education. They are not engineers, they are not architects, they are not electricians, they are not really in there, but they've seen an opportunity to enter into the industry and to provide a service that they believe that they can profit on. But in many instances, while they may have some talent, they may be a mason or carpenter, electrician, plumber, and they believe that they can get into the industry and succeed. There's some basic understanding that is required that many of them don't see in the implementation of their projects. And one of the most significant components of that is that of project management. I often say to contractors, when a project or a contract is awarded to you at a fixed cost, the longer you stay on that project, the more costly it becomes. Because you have your workers to pay, whether by the hour or by the day, it's going to cost you money. You've got to understand how well or how efficient can you manage the resources that you have, whether it's financial resources or human resources or otherwise, to be able to move into the execution of the contract without wasting any time. So you shouldn't have on a project, at the commencement of the project, individuals you don't need on that project. And I hope the Chief Engineer will agree with me when she speaks. Because sometimes some contractors would get, and it happens particularly with petty contractors, they would bring a full workforce on site to commence the project, only to find that half of them, they are not needed. So project management is very important, to be able to get that project moving efficiently, effectively, and to be delivered within time so as to move on to another project. I believe this is absolutely important for those who are in the industry. The other aspect is that of health and safety. Only this morning I had to caution a particular contractor, and I'll not tell you where, when I experienced last night an incident, and I said to him, you guys must understand that part of your responsibility is not only to execute the contract and manage it, but also to guarantee health and safety on the job. Those who are working, those who probably will encounter you while you work, and to ensure that everyone is safe while you are executing that project. Many believe that you get onto a work site, you start working, at the end of the day, you just leave the work site as a working place and come back the next day and continue, rather than to accept the fact that in some instances, the environment within which you're working is also either an environment that is actively being used by the occupants of the facility, if it's a facility that you are refurbishing or otherwise. Quality control is another one. We need to ensure that in executing projects that we maintain quality. And I must tell you that this year, I have insisted, and I've been speaking to the chief engineer, while we recognize 2024 as the year of infrastructure, within the Department of Infrastructure, there's even a bigger picture. A bigger picture in that recently we launched a program, what I call a 6-year program, called Infrastructure 2030. And 2030, Infrastructure 2030, is not just a tagline. It is a bold strategic initiative within the Department of Infrastructure to look at policies, look at legislation, look at protocols, look at standards, and to ensure that we improve on those standards. In this country, we have a deficit in infrastructure, not only in the integrity of our infrastructure, the aging integrity of our infrastructure, but also as the world turns and technology unfolds, we are lagging behind in terms of our methodologies, etc., etc. And one area that I'm truly concerned about is that of quality and standards. I have said the materials laboratory at the Ministry of Infrastructure, the Department of Infrastructure, must be enhanced, and I'm speaking to the government of Taiwan with the hope that next year that they will give us some technical assistance and financial assistance and partnering with us in terms of enhancing the materials unit, laboratory unit, so as to get our contractors and all to understand in construction there are standards to be upheld. And so you have to test the materials that you use, you have to test the mixes that you use, and to ensure that there are standards. Within the department itself, we must set some standards. We must be able to say, what are the standards? What are the codes? The Department of Physical Development is currently enhancing the regulations within the department, and soon it will be published, of changing building codes that will be introduced to ensure that we don't just simply speak about codes that will be able to withstand hurricanes, but also codes that will make our structures a lot safer. So there's quite a bit to be done. And on top of it all, what is required is an efficient financing organization that can respond to your need. I must indicate that for the many petty contractors, you big guys, you don't trouble me, but for the small contractors, those young guys who are coming into the system, who probably don't even understand what they're using, what they're doing, to give them that opportunity, I must indicate that the Development Bank has been very exemplary in giving that support service to those petty contractors. There's a lady there inside there, I'll not mention her name, but she's very agile, being after them, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do, and giving them that guidance and that support, which is most important to those small contractors. So I do hope that today's activity, which is intended to foster synergies between government, between the financial institution, contractors, and to bring that synergy together, big contractors, small contractors, petty contractors, in that shaping that we're talking about of shaping more progressive, efficient, and sustainable contractors. But most of all, creating an environment, an enabling environment that will allow your sector to prosper and to grow beyond what it is today. In many instances, one of the biggest problems we have, while we have associations for architects and engineers, electrical or otherwise, as contractors, we do not have a body of contractors to say, this is a representative body. If there's one that I don't know of, I'm sorry, but I believe that is something we need to do, because people must be participating in this thing. Too often we tend to be a little selfish and don't want to share ideas, don't want to counsel others, don't want to uplift others. But then we must create that environment, and the government has a role also to be able to create an environment in which people have the trust and the confidence in the system, that it is transparent, that you have nothing to do. Many people sort of, you know, they get nervous when you say to them that they've got to tender on a project. Many of them, the small ones, will say the number of copies they've got to make of the contract or the tender document, it costs them money, and by the time they submit it, they have lost all this money, $1,000, $2,000. So we need to look at that and see how can we create an environment that will allow all to survive, whether you're small, medium, or large. But I believe this is a good first step, and I'm very confident that with the St. Lucia Development Bank and its leadership, from the chairman to the managing director and staff of the bank, I do believe that they are sincere, they are focused, they understand the mission before them, and they're doing what is necessary to get you to participate and to join with the government in attempting to make sure that the enabling environment is in place and that your own structures are there to give you the necessary support. So I want to thank you very much. I want to thank the chief engineer and others who have pulled this together, and I look forward to seeing much more coming out of this first initiative.
You just heard there from the Infrastructure Minister, Mr. Stevenson King, speaking earlier today during a contractors symposium. In recent days, we've been hearing as well from the Minister with responsibility for sports and youth development, Mr. Kenson Casimir, and he has been refuting claims that this year the cancellation of the school sports is definitely a true story. He says this is not true at all. It's false.
The notion that there is no school sports this term is a lie. It's an absolute lie. There is no truth to that. In fact, we currently have schools football, we currently have schools netball, and we currently have road race events happening in schools, to culminate with the primary school road race championship and the secondary school road race championship. January 6th, we'll see the commencement of cricket in our school's competition. And then we will see the addition of some additional competitions. I am very, very disappointed that we have a society where individuals believe that the only way to get by is to lie. I'm not sure what example we are setting for the next generation, especially when the facts are so available. I would challenge anybody in the media today to go to the VG playing field and you would see schools football as we speak. The results of the matches in the netball and football have been posted on the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports page. A cursory look at the web page will show you that results have been posted for over a week and a half. Results of matches played in Soufrière, Fiji, Complex, surrounding areas, Miku Court for netball. everybody in St. Lucia can access that information by just going to the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports, St. Lucia Facebook page. So, the notion that the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports did not have the financing to have school sports this term is an absolute and blatant lie. There is no truth to it. The notion that the Ministry of Youth Development and Sport took money earmarked for school sports and spent it on the Julian Alfred Concert and Reward is an absolute salacious, fallacious lie. There is no truth to it. The Ministry of Finance financed all the celebrations for Julian Alfred. The rewards that are given are coming from the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Youth Development and Sports have its own budget for school sports. That school sports budget cannot be touched for anything else than school sports. That as well is easily verifiable. It is sad, very sad, that persons who are interested in being leaders of this land, and it's not just one, multiple members of the opposition have gone on to absolutely spread untruth as it pertains to youth and sports development in this land. And it is sad that the only way we can show our next generation to get anywhere is to believe that you must lie. And then we speak about crime, we speak about deviance, we speak about the moral fabric of our society. Yet those individuals charged with setting the example see no other way to do it but to be dishonest. Questions?
Yes. Having stated that, I know that there was some, shall we say, contention with some PE teachers in some schools between your ministry and them. Can you give us an update as to what exactly was the issue there and was it eventually solved?
Thank you very much. As you may be aware, the best period, so to speak, of youth and sports, sort of not just development but cohesion, was when the Ministry of Youth and Sports and the Ministry of Education fell under one ministry. So you had, during Mario Michel's time, that you had the Ministry of Education, Human Resource Development, Youth and Sport. And so the coordination of things such as school sports would have fallen under one ministry. We have a dynamic where you have a Ministry of Youth and Sport with 4 youth and sports officers, 4 sports officers responsible for doing so much. We have a situation where one of our youth and sports officers fell sick at the most inopportune time. That provided somewhat of a delay. You also have to take into consideration what type of year we had. The Ministry of Youth Development and Sport had perhaps the busiest year you could ever ask a Ministry of Youth and Sports in our history. In 2024, we were preparing for a World Cup. Then we hosted the World Cup. We were preparing for Olympics. And then we saw what happened at the Olympics. And so we were preparing for the return of Julian Alfred. We were preparing for CPL. And you saw what happened at CPL. And then you had a situation where some glitches. There were some glitches. But to make it seem as if we were incapable of dealing with those glitches and have what we have going on now is absolutely ludicrous. We are transitioning as a ministry, and I will tell you, I have spoken since I became Minister of Sport about what is needed to really chart the course for proper sports development in this nation. And what we are doing is changing the whole dynamic. We are not thinking outside of the box. We are throwing the box. We are developing our own box. And after we develop that own box, we are thinking outside of it. And so we are putting together a school sports commission made up of representatives from the Ministry of Education, representatives from Youth and Sports, representatives from the diaspora, the police, and all and sundry, to really take sports at schools to another level. We are transitioning. And when you transition in, it doesn't just happen overnight. You have to do it through phases. You have to sit down at the table. You have to have meetings. You have to argue. You have to then decide what you're doing. And sometimes the decision taken may be incorrect at the time. Go back to the table, the drawing board, and get it right. And so what we are doing as a ministry is putting the dynamics together to have a different school sports program that we will see all the benefits of in our near future. We've shifted from having our island champs during the week to having it on the weekend. We have been having discussions with Earl Bollogshaw, with Stuart Charles Favre, about how we continue to develop schools football with the SLFA and possibly move some of the matches, some of the historic matches, to the weekends. It is almost impossible to continue to do school sports the way we've done it for the last 40 years and see the results that we want. Forcing school sports with all those schools activities within a 5-day, a 4-day period in a week has not worked. And so we are channeling a different way. Part of the School Sports Commission will see somebody who is responsible for developing all the different alumni associations, specifically to bring back persons from schools who have a sports background to develop sports within their respective schools, to fund sports within their respective schools, to ensure that at the end of the day we have a proper structure for each school individually as it pertains to sport. And so we are going through this right now. We've seen huge rewards from having our island champs on the weekend. And I will just end this particular question by saying it has sent chills to the opposition who believe that the only way they can make any headway in what's happening in youth and sports development in this nation is to just stand up on a podium and just make the headlines that the media is going to push out by lying.
But just going back to my particular question about the PE teachers, was there a conflict and was it addressed?
So we have to answer the question in terms of education and sports. We do have PE teachers that would request fixture by a certain time. And I have said in times past, school sports is every year. We should not be waiting until a particular time to have a proper fixture. But even then, when you're the minister or you're dealing with the Ministry of Youth and Sport, you cannot directly engage persons from the Ministry of Education unless you go for a chief education officer or a senior official. So just in putting a fixture together, certain schools may be ready, but if you put in a fixture, as you would understand, with 5 teams in a group, if one school is not ready or has not indicated their interest or has not shown that they will be participating, then you have a delay because it affects the entire process. So there were some issues with the PE Teachers Association, and they did have some legitimate gripes. But at the end of the day, good sense prevailed. We had a meeting with the Minister of Education. We had discussions at the ministries, and now we have school sports. We have the competitions ongoing, and we're expecting that within a week and a half, that most of the competitions would be concluded, and then we'll be having a proper sit-down with a school sports commission to ensure that we continue to move the school sports agenda in the right direction.
Okay, so just to clarify, all the events like including Intersect that happens in so is all the things on track?
Every single school has sent in their date for the inter-house competition, and all have been scheduled. We have had a lot of work at the Bindo Philip Park, and we are at the final stages of instilling lights at the Mindo Phillip Park. Darren Sammy is available, except for a couple of cricket matches we're expecting, available. And so, all from the information given to me by my PS, all the secondary schools especially, they've provided their date for the inter-house competitions, and we will be having inter-house and inter-sec island champs as per usual.
Okay,
fact.
I heard some talk about some of these events filtering into the third term. Is there any truth to that?
We always have events in the third term. What we did do was we moved one of the events from this term, since we had this hectic schedule, into next term, which did not affect anybody at all. The same students that were there in this term, they will be there come January. And so they will be participating in their sport of choice. There is nothing untoward, there's nothing significant, there's nothing to be worried about as it pertains to school sports in this country occurring. My responsibility is to ensure that school sports develops at a higher level. And that is what I'm going to do as the minister.
So we have the CPL homecoming coming up, and people are arguing that it's a franchise and the government should not be investing so much in a homecoming celebration. What are your thoughts on this?
Everybody has an opinion. I, as minister, believe that the CPL franchise, the Kings, they have done significant work for cricket development in St. Lucia. On Saturday, I had to leave my Yamaha Beach to attend a High Performance Center celebration of the 1-year anniversary. We have been developing cricket at another level. We have 11 cricketers for the first time in our history playing international cricket, 11 on that level. The St. Lucia Kings, they provided gear, they provided funding, they provided trips to some of our coaches so we can further develop cricket in this nation. The St. Lucia Kings, they've invested in some of our premier cricketers. Shadrach Descott, Akim O'Geese, Johnson Charles, in times past Johnny Eugene, McKenny Clark, just to name a few. If we have gotten to this momentous occasion where we actually finally won the CPL, with so many of our young players on the fringes of breaking into that CPL team, how much damage can we do by showing our appreciation to the franchise, to the cricketers who played? How much damage will it do to have a celebration for our achievement, an achievement that has never happened in this nation's history? And so for me, I respect the opinions of others, but I respectfully disagree. And I believe we are doing the right thing by getting all of St. Lucia together for the celebration. We'll be having an announcement of how we're going to further show appreciation for Johnson Charles specifically for all his accomplishments throughout the years for St. Lucia as a representative. We're going to call on everybody to just be part of the cricket competition, the cricket match between the West Indies and England at the Darren Sammy on the 14th, 16th, and 18th.
And you mentioned the Yamaha Suntest. Can you speak to that as well?
First of all, as a parliamentary rep for Grosley, about almost a year and a half ago, myself along with Emma Hippolyte and Alfred Prosper, we went over to Martinique where we had the preliminary conversations about Yamaha Fest. I must say the conversations were very, very in-depth. We took our time. Like I said, our initial conversations was a year and a half ago. We took our time. The Ministry of Tourism Events Company, they really worked assiduously with the organizers. They put in a very, very good program, which included an event in Soufrière. We planned for one of the biggest Friday nights we've seen in years. I had meetings with the Vendors Association as well. We saw scores, thousands of people booking Airbnbs. And of course, at the event, during the time I was there, let's just say it was fascinating. Carnival atmosphere on the beach, the boats in the water, and people really coming together and enjoy each other. I saw all walks of life there. I saw rich, I saw poor, I saw middle class, I saw young, I saw elderly. I saw persons that had not been talking for a long time because I'm still very much in touch with the ghettos, stones thrown away from each other, and it was incident-free. And I must say hats off to all the organizers for getting this thing done. I look forward to next year, and I look forward to the people of Gros Islet continuing to benefit from some of the activities put in place by this government to really spur economic income.
Did it have any impact on Friday Fish Fest?
No, it did, a positive impact, because what we had was on Friday night, everybody who was on island from Dominica, Guadeloupe, Martinique, they want to experience Gros Islet Friday night. And we had, vendors, most of them were sold out. They sold all the drinks. I could walk through Gros Islet right now and meet vendors, and I think they will invite me to the house for macaroni and cheese and breadfruit and all that sort of stuff, because they really had a good time. And I think the economic activities something like a Yamaha Fest brings is something that we have to encourage as often as possible.
Where are we now with the noise pollution legislation?
Well, the noise pollution legislation was laid in cabinet, in Parliament 2 Tuesdays ago for its first reading. And so the document is ready for public consumption. Everybody from the media can actually read through it. What you will see is some sort of legislation when it comes to decibel levels, which is what most of St. Lucia is interested in. As I said, it's not a bill that will be popular, because you can really imagine no other MP before me touched it. They left it because it's something with dire consequences. You may lose political influence because you may be affecting one sector and, being perceived as, gravitating towards another. But for me as MP, I didn't come to just make popular decisions. I came to make decisions. And so I will always speak my mind. I will always do what I think is best for the majority of people. And so I would invite the media to have a look at that legislation. I would invite everybody in Rodney Bay that has been calling the offices, in Bonte, in Cap Estate. And the legislation is not for Gros Islet, That's the funny thing. It's for all of St. Lucia. But I'm happy that I took the lead on it. And now we finally have it as first reading in Parliament. And so the debate will ensue. Like I said, no legislation is perfect. I do have some concerns. And you will hear, of course, the opposition and some of my colleagues express some concerns, but it is something that we had to do, and legislation is always there to be amended.
Yeah. Youth Awards is coming up.
Yes.
Was the nomination process this year different? I didn't hear much about it. Like last year, I had a lot in the build-up. I know there was, a link available for nominations, but I didn't hear much this year. Then I saw nominees. So I want to know what the process was like, and what do you have scheduled for Youth Awards as well?
Well, there was no big difference in the process. Perhaps, again, with a small ministry, sometimes we will be really on top in terms of the publicity of all our events. I don't think people know that. We've been punching as a ministry above our weight for the last 3.5 years, like no other. Let's just put this in perspective. We have only 4 sports officers on island, and we have 3 youth officers on island. We have youth workers spread throughout the actual country. But in terms of the organization for these events, we've obviously had to, get some outside individuals to come in, events company to come in. But we've been punching above our weight, and I think we've been doing very well. So we did have a similar nomination process, and I can tell you on the 9th, I wanted to make sure I got the date correct for everybody. Saturday, the 9th of November, this Saturday, we will be seeing Youth Awards, very special year for our young people, at the Pavilion in Rodney Bay. We're expecting a very, very good event. It's under the patronage of our Prime Minister, who unfortunately may not be on island. But it should be an event that all of the media and all of St. Lucia should pay attention to. It will be on our media, our webpage as well, and so people could definitely be part of it.
Mr. Minister, just briefly to fall back on the decibel, the noise pollution. We know there was a concern group from Rodney Bay who were involved in the initial discussion. So is there, would you say, a time frame? You say now it's for public consumption. Would there be a time frame with these people, especially the residents from that area, when we started?
Well, the time frame has already been there because we put it in Parliament. So we had the first reading 2 weeks ago, and apparently not many people paid attention to that Parliament sitting. But we did have the first reading of that amendment, of the amendment to the noise pollution bill. And once it's laid in Parliament, the course of action is normally for all the media and everybody to get a hold of it, go through it. If you are not too acquainted with legal jargons, get somebody to give you an opinion on how it works. And then you have the second reading, which really is the debate. I'm certainly hoping that very soon, I am hoping very soon that we will have that second reading in Parliament, where I, as the Minister for Youth and the Parliamentary Rep for Gros-Islet, will opine on all the dynamics of that legislation. And thereafter, the second and third reading pretty much is in one session. And so very soon, I'm hoping that we can have a very peaceful Christmas. I'm hoping. I'm not the one who decides. I think everybody knows that. I don't go above my pay grade, but I'm hoping that everybody can have a very nice Christmas.
So putting together the framework, what was the suggestions and the proposals from these groups?
Of course. I personally had meetings with those groups. The police, Gros-Islet Police, they were also involved. They definitely kept me abreast with all the conversations, and of course the site visits in that community until it became overly political. Some of the conversations were more along political lines. I pretty much stepped back and did the negotiations, the conversations with the different stakeholders and the Attorney General's chambers, and provided as much input as I could on what the legislation should look like. We also consulted a number of other countries to see what their decibel levels were, which is pretty much the area of contention. Before, this legislation would not have existed in its current form because we did not have the technology to actually measure decibels. But right now, any one of us can put an app down on our phone and go to Rodney Bay and say whether or not this individual is in contravention of the legislation that we are about to pass in terms of the decibel levels. Most of the conversation will be on decibel levels, whether or not it's too low for ultra lounge or whether it is too high for Joe Public. These are the conversations you're going to have. You're going to have conversations as to whether or not a vehicle being driven, passing through a neighborhood should be at a particular decibel level and whether or not it should be lower. Whether or not a vehicle that is altered with a hi-fi should be considered to be at a particular level and not others. So, I mean, I can tell you, it's been 3 years since I've been in, and the discussion has been thorough. There is no one answer. There is no best answer. Everybody will not be happy. You cannot make everybody happy with some of the things you have to do as a minister. But I'm happy we've done it. And whenever there are adjustments to be made, we'll make it.
Any updates on Skill 758?
Skill 758, that's a good one. The last update I had was last week. The roadshow was supposed to have commenced very, very soon. The app is up and running, and so individuals can actually access the app and put in their qualifications, their skills, with the hopes of getting employment and a better standard of living through St. Lucia, the region, and the rest of the world. Yeah? Thank you all so much. Let me make sure I told you all everything there. Just for your information, the concert, the return to address your question, the return of the St. Lucia Kings. As we know, we're going to have the concert. That's on the 12th of November. So we're going to start off with the school section in terms of all the school cricket teams, whether it's primary school and secondary school. They'll be given first opportunity to meet with the players from the St. Lucia Kings and other West Indians who may be on island. So I think that's to answer your question as well as to whether or not it's a worthwhile investment. I think that would be very well. That would be a big motivation for our young people to actually get their autographs, get their pictures. And so we'll be starting that from 2 p.m. at the Derek Walcott Square on November 12th. And then at 4 p.m., Bacchanal. Local acts, local talent on display into the night, and the announcement for what we are doing to further show appreciation for Johnson Charles.
And you just heard there from the Island Sports and Youth Development Minister, Mr. Kingston Casimir, denying that school sports has been cancelled this year. We move now on to the island's minister with responsibility for finance and the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Mr. Philip J. Pierre. Over the last few months, definitely we've been focusing on the problems in the health sector. In particular, many resignations from the OKE hospital and the fact that the health institution has been facing some serious financial problems. Well, it was 2 months ago that Mr. Pierre, in his capacity as finance minister, made a check donation to the health institution amounting to some $11 million. He addressed that particular ceremony.
The Minister of Health calls me every morning and tells me that he hasn't slept when he thinks of the issues as they relate to health. So I said to him, I can't help him because I'm not a doctor. I never professed to be a doctor. I have a cousin that's a doctor. I have a second cousin that's a doctor. But me, I never professed to be a doctor. You can ask the CMO. She instructed me to get my COVID vaccine twice or 3 times CMO. 3 times? She instructed me. I did it immediately. So I listened to doctors. I really want to thank the medical fraternity in St. Lucia, the doctors, the nurses, everyone, those who work, the health aides, those who work in the wards. I want to thank them because really your service is a service of love. I know there are greener pastures in other parts of the country, in other parts of the world, sorry. And the very fact that you are here, it's a statement that you love St. Lucia and you love the people of St. Lucia. I really want to thank you. And I've thanked you many times before. I've done that several times before, in government, in opposition. So it's not a recent thing that I'm saying. I've always thanked the people in the medical fraternity. The same I thank teachers and policemen because of my parents. That's part of my DNA. So I really want to thank you. I want to tell you that we understand the issues of healthcare. And we even understand when you complain. We know you want the best for St. Lucia and the best for your patients. So we understand. So we're not in the business of criticizing you because you complain. Sometimes we believe it could be done differently. But we're not in the business of criticizing any doctor. I would be the last person to look for any conflict with any doctor. Both for my personal reasons, and you know, I'll tell you something. We are developing in this country a very negative attitude, very negative, and that's bad for the country. The country must be allowed to breathe. We are only seeing the glass half empty. There's constant bombardment, constant negativity. Several people tell me they come to OKU and they get good treatment. People tell me they come to the hospital and they applaud the treatment of the nurses and the doctors. They tell me so. Of course they have issues. There must be issues. There is no medical system without issues. But we've developed a situation of negativity in this country, and many times it's for personal reasons. For me, I have absolutely no personal reasons to be negative with anybody. My job as the Prime Minister of this country is to assist within the capabilities of the country and the financial capabilities of the government. So I want to tell you very early that this government will have no problems, we'll have no arguments, we'll have discussions, we'll have different points of view, and I promise you an open door together with the minister and the members of the board. Let us discuss things. Let us not assume before we talk. Let's talk first. That's the difference between human beings and the other species. We can talk to each other. So let's try not to read anybody's heart or not to read what we think are people's motives. I want to tell you that we understand that there are issues at the hospital and in the health sector generally. Issues in the health sector are not new to St. Lucia. That's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. But factually, issues of health are not new to St. Lucia. Only night before, I heard Barack Obama speak something about Obamacare. Only in the great United States, there are issues with the health sector. So there always will be issues. There have always been issues, and there will continue to be issues, because no country can 100% finance the health care of their citizens. St. Lucia is no exception. So again, I want to thank you for the conditions that you work under. But I also want to tell you that you're doing some good work under the circumstances. The issue with the health services, to my mind, and let me raise my hand and say I'm not a doctor, seem to be the issues with the emergency health services. People want to get treated immediately when they come to the hospital, and that is complex. First of all, the number of cases that come there will not, nobody could expect that in such a quick space of time, there have been 60 patients, sometimes 70 patients, sometimes 80 patients for medical services. And that by itself is due to a number of reasons. I'm not a doctor. Due to a number of reasons why that happens. So there is pressure on the emergency services. Pressure. We understand that, and the government applauds the people who are working in that sector. So how do we solve it? We had a discussion, and we were told that people are sitting on chairs, etc., so we need more bed space. But we also have a problem that there are borders in the hospital. There are people who come here and they're in a hotel. That's a fact. But we don't like to deal with this. We know we just go around. And we have to be truthful. In our analysis, we have to be truthful. So when I said to the members of the board and to the doctors that we could expand the space available now, he said to me, Prime Minister, we have borders. What do we do with them? Put them in the streets? What do we do with them? So you have to find space for them. So whereas the intention is to increase the bed space, so people can't be sitting on chairs, which looks very bad. The visuals are bad. We want to put them in beds, but we have to take off the borders. The people who are just there. And I want to say to the people of St. Lucia, because you know, the responsibility for health care is not the responsibility only of the government. Some time ago, if I can go back a little bit, I spoke about eating the right foods, etc., right? I was ridiculed. He said I was St. to eat fig. You know, sometimes I spoke about fitness. I was said I went into a health, a diet that caused me to lose some weight. They said I was sick. So you must understand the messages that we send, the hidden messages that we send for other reasons. So we have people with the high blood pressure, with diabetes, who end up in the emergency ward because they're probably not taking their medication, etc. So that's further pressure. So to my mind, we have to solve the issues as far as the emergency services are concerned. So what did we find out? We found out that there are payables due to suppliers for years. I'm not going to tell you how long before, but you know, because the world started on 21st of July 2021. That's when the world started. So we're not going to be discussing the backlog of debt. We're not going to be discussing that, because that's our responsibility now. We asked for a statement of payables. Dutifully, the statement of payables showed, and I have it on my phone, sent for me, because I don't interfere in these things. I don't interfere. It's not my style. I don't interfere in people's ministries and play I know everything. I do not know everything. I will never know everything. So I depend on people to give me information and people to tell me what's wrong or what's right. I was given a list that says there are $16 million worth of payables. $16 million worth of payables for this hospital alone. $16 million. Of course, $16 million did not accrue from the 21st October 2021. July. That's not when it accrued. It didn't begin on the 21st of July. It did not. So we're not going to go into how much was there before. We're not going there. $16 million worth of payables. What does that do to the administration of the hospital? What it does is that it constrains the cash flow of the hospital to deal with its working needs. Because you have to pay for things you do not have. You have to pay for things you got before. You have to pay for medication that you don't have now, but you have to pay for it, you got it before. So it constrains your ability to buy new medication, to buy new medicines, to buy equipment, because you are using what's supposed to be your working capital, you use it to pay accounts payable. I hope my terminology is correct. Using it to pay accounts payable. Some time ago, I knew a little bit about that. I've forgotten it now. So you are using your working capital to pay accounts payable. So what did we do? We said, for the OKA hospital, we are going to try to settle these payables so when the hospital gets its allocation, which should be more, they can use the allocation for their working capital needs. So we decided that we would try to pay these outstanding payables. Where did we get the money from? We got the money from what is called the excess cash from the CIP. Now these days, the discussion is on the CIP, so we're not going there. Because that's the topic of discussion now. We're not going we're not talking about that. So we went to the CIP board and we asked them for $11 million to help us to pay these outstanding payables. The board agreed. That wasn't enough. We needed $5 million more. Thankfully, the finances of the country could afford $5 million because we have some small surpluses these days. Remember, when you speak about surpluses, they tell you why you're not going to buy food for people and things. But the surpluses, the economy could afford some small surpluses. So we took $5 million from the surpluses to put the $11 million, hopefully to clear the $16 million backlog. So you can use your allocation for working capital. That's the first step. So that step came from cash flow, it came from reserves. That's the first step. The second step is to deal with medical expenses generally. And I'm going to make a revelation this afternoon that may surprise you. Sometimes I wonder how the people in the Ministry of Health survive. Do you know that people are owed from COVID days? People are owed for services that they delivered to this country from COVID days and before. We owe the French authorities $2 million for health care, some of it as old as the year 2001. I have instructed that an audit be done on the payables of the Ministry of Health for two reasons. We want the Ministry of Health to be able to use their allocation to do what they have to do. And secondly, we want to be able to give some sort of relief to the local suppliers of medical services to the hospital. Because there are local people who provide services to the hospital. for St. Lucians. Because you may know, healthcare in St. Lucia is more or less free. If not free, more or less free. Because the people who pay their bills are very, very, I mean, it's a small percentage of people who pay their bills. And you can't tell somebody you are giving them service because in a public hospital because they haven't paid their bills. It's very, 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 very small, the percentage. I don't know the exact figures. 5%. And I'm told that a figure to run the hospital would be $100 million per year. That's what I was told. Some boys tell me it's more than that. 104, 105. Right? Now we collect 5%, we collect $5 million. So let's go quickly to the health and security levy that you hear about all the time. And the health and security levy is a plaster for all the health services, all health problems in Lucia. The health and security levy came into being in about October last year. And it collected $8 million up to March. $8 million. And the projections for the health and security levy is that for this financial year, it will collect how much, Wayne? $33 million. That's the projections, you know. So when you had the young health and security levy, taxing overburden of taxpayers, $33 million is what it will collect. And I'm told to run OKU alone would be $100 million. So even though we put all the money that's collected in the health and security levy, now forget about security, which is a lot of your problems, because when people get shot, they come to you, they get wounded, putting more pressure on your emergency services. Even though we put all of it, and forget about security, we'll need about $70 more million to run OKEU alone. These are the facts. That's the reality. So we can jump and scream and say whatever we want. That's the reality of the situation. So what are we doing? We are going to use that money to help you pay your payables. You'll be able to use your allocation, and we'll try to increase it. I don't want to make these promises. But we're also going to make a significant intervention in the finances of the Ministry of Health. Significant. I am told that the Ministry of Health may owe between $40 and $50 million to suppliers. That's the situation, you know. Not OKU, the Ministry of Health may owe between $40 and $50 million to suppliers. And I can assure you that this government is going to deal with that issue very, very shortly. You'll clap for me now. I used the wrong word, doctor. We have to laugh, you know. We mustn't do this country as if, let's, you know, I mean, we're too heavy. Let's relax. Don't worry about all the negativity and the thing that's been peddled in the country. St. Lucia is a wonderful country. We have wonderful doctors, wonderful nurses. Huh? So we're going to deal with that. We're going to deal with that. So what I want to do is I want to allow the Ministry of Health a free hand, and they now must be accountable. They now must be accountable. And I'm going to demand accountability, both from the Ministry of Health and from the OKU. Because what we invested is taxpayers' money. So we're going to demand accountability. So, very shortly, I'm going to reveal to the country how we're going to hopefully, permanently, solve the financial issues that relate to healthcare in St. Lucia. And that's as far as my job is. That's what I can do. I'm the Minister of Finance, all I can do. I can do nothing else. I can't tell doctors what to do. I know about nothing. It's up to you now to work with your board and work with your colleagues to solve the health problems in this country, under the guidance, the policy directions of the Minister of Health, who is not a doctor either. So that's all. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to try to solve the financing issues as they relate to health once and hopefully for all. And these issues did not begin on the 21st of July. So, this is just the first step in a revamped financial package for health for this country. As to how we get there is up to you. So I took some time to explain to you what we are doing and to once more tell you the government's deep appreciation for what you do. And that history goes for a long time. We're the government that decided to send people to get trained in Cuba. We trained 300 nurses. We were ridiculed for that. Most of them have gone. So you see that history is important. When we sent 300 young people to learn to be nurses, the government at the time, Dr. Kenny Anthony, had the foresight that nurses would be necessary. We were ridiculed. Now, I understand most of them have left because nurses are migrating. We have to decide on a package to try and keep our nurses in St. Lucia, keep our doctors in St. Lucia. So your conditions are not perfect. I want to thank you again for working under these conditions. You will never hear from me anything, never hear from this Prime Minister, anything that seems like I know anything about medicine or doctors. You never hear from me. I will listen to advice, I'll listen to counsel, and I will tell you what I can do as far as the finances are concerned.
And it was on Tuesday of this week we heard from the Public Relations Officer of the Opposition United Workers' Party, Mr. Leonard Spider Motut, focusing as well on the deficiencies in the island's health sector.
We have a government that does not think that you deserve first-class health care, and so they have taken us down a retrogressive path where they have diminished the services that are provided. Starting with St. Jude, what they have done was to go back to the old building that is over 80 years old, that is not designed for the purpose of a hospital, and that would require a lot of retrofitting that would cost a tremendous amount of resources. They have decided, because it was the Alan Chastney-led administration that began the modern hospital, they would not complete it, but instead spend hundreds of millions of dollars more than what has already been spent to go back to that old hospital. Had our government understood that government is continuous and that government is there to serve the people and to do what is in the best interest of the people, they would have continued the new modern hospital that would have taken them a mere 6 months to complete with just about $50 million, as opposed to this hospital that has not been completed in over 3 years, and we are hearing figures of over $200 million to be expended in addition to what has already been spent. To compound the disaster, we have a Minister of Health, Honorable Moses Shabatis, who is clueless as far as healthcare is concerned. And I say to you, the demise of our healthcare system has everything to do with poor administration, poor governance, lack of visioning, and poor planning. And so, as a result of this, we saw that the existing facilities deteriorate to the point that some have been closed, and those that remain open are undersupplied in terms of equipment and supplies, medical supplies that would be required for patients, as well as we see that the government has also created a situation that has discouraged our human resources at the hospitals and health centers, that we have our medical professionals leaving in droves. This leaves St. Lucia in a critical crisis. And I say so because even as important as education is, the missteps that are made with education, we can argue we can catch up later. Because there are those of us who left primary school years ago, barely functionally literate, but today we have gone back into the education system, educated ourselves, and some even have reached the level of having university degrees. Unfortunately, we do not have that privilege when it comes to healthcare, because what is happening now is catastrophic to the extent that the failures of the system results in the death of our citizens. And so for minor health issues, some people are losing their lives. That, I want to remind you, is irreversible, and that cannot be corrected down the road. Death is the ultimate. When you have passed, that is the end. And so, am I to think that our government is so callous, so inconsiderate, so uncaring, that even when it comes to the lives of our citizens in St. Lucia, that they don't give a hoot? I have heard the Prime Minister say that he endorses and fully supports his health minister. A health minister that has presided over the worst era in our healthcare system, some services. Our Medical and Dental Association indicated to us that what obtains today is the worst that they have ever experienced, the worst that they have ever seen in the history of this country. And you're going to say to me that you are satisfied with that? You're going to say to me that the responsibility that you're charged with to provide health care services to St. Lucians, you are just going to play politics as opposed to dealing with the situation to ameliorate the crisis that we are facing and to save lives in this country. I want to say to St. Lucians that there is a better way. We know a better way, and we have to go back to a better way. I am very impressed with the plans, first of all, with the management of our healthcare system under the United Workers' Party. And let me just give you a quick refresher as to what obtained under the United Workers' Party a mere 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and beyond. We had a situation where we were faced with COVID. We made a transition to the OKEU hospital, and we converted the Victoria Hospital to a respiratory hospital to facilitate the care of COVID patients. During that time, we were able to manage that global pandemic that had never been experienced, never been seen before, in such a responsible and competent manner that we got the attention of the international community, and we got high praises as a country for our management of the virus. Today, that Victoria Hospital is closed, and let us not forget that the intention and plans of the United Workers' Party was to compensate for the closure of the Castries Health Center. We would have converted the Victoria Hospital to a polyclinic that would serve the Castries Basin, and eventually to reopen the Castries Health Center where basic primary healthcare services would be provided. That, ladies and gentlemen, would take a lot of pressure off the National Hospital, the OKU Hospital. And as such, we wouldn't have a situation of patients turning up at the hospital, not seeing a doctor for days, I am told, and being in corridors and on the floor waiting to see a doctor. During which time, of course, in many cases, their health situation deteriorates and becomes worse. I say to St. Lucians that there is in fact a better way. We have forgone the possibility of having a health insurance for every St. Lucian that would provide at least $75,000 coverage for medical procedures, unlike what obtains today, where the majority, I'm going to hazard a guess and say at least 90% of St. Lucians do not have medical insurance, and as such, we see all those GoFundMe, those barbecues, those fundraising activities. Whenever people are afflicted, especially with life-threatening illnesses, we have to go around raising funds, waiting to accumulate the funds, during which time people's health deteriorate, and in many cases, some of the people end up perishing. That is something we have to go back to if we truly care about the health of our people in this country. I say so because it is no secret that around the world, health care is very expensive, and we must devise means and ways of financing it. We must make the resources available We must find a way to make it happen, especially for the poorer and the indigent of this country who have no option but to depend on our public health services. So while the government officials perhaps are insensitive and unconcerned because they have options at their disposal, they are flown to Martinique, Miami, and elsewhere at taxpayers' expense should they have any mishap in terms of their health situation. The rest of us do not have that privilege. And so we must ensure that we establish proper healthcare services right here in St. Lucia that will be available to every St. Lucian. And so I look forward to the return of the United Workers' Party when we will complete the modern state-of-the-art St. Jude's Hospital, where the patients and staff of the George Odlum Stadium will go into an actually built-for-purpose facility called the St. Jude Hospital. That in itself will increase the standard, the level, the comfort, the security, and the standard of health services generally to the people in the South. I want to see us continue to develop that hospital where we will have an international hospital on the top floor, where services that we have to fly out of St. Lucia for will be available here, with the intention that even overseas patients will come to St. Lucia for those specialized services. I want to see us go back to an OKEU hospital that has the supplies required, the equipment required, and the conditions required that we can maintain, and keep our healthcare professionals who are required to provide the high-level standard of service that is needed. The Prime Minister said it is normal, and the health professionals and administrative staff who have left in droves are merely leaving to go to greener pastures. May I remind the Prime Minister that those very health professionals were aware of the greener pastures. The greener pastures existed when they made the decision and they made the choice to provide their services instead to their countrymen in their homeland. Today, your poor governance and maladministration has forced them out of frustration, out of our facilities, leaving us, the citizens of St. Lucia, in a desperately dire situation that can have life-ending consequences for the average St. Lucian. We must, as St. Lucians, take cognizance of this, take a stance against this situation, because it is our life, it is our health that has been jeopardized and put at risk to such an extent. And when you have a government that is not willing to stand up and take action to live up to its responsibilities, you must stand up and take action yourself. I remember when the president of the Medical and Dental Association issued that letter to the board, the reaction, the response of the government of St. Lucia. One government minister abused the president of the Medical and Dental Association and called her a political hack. That is the kind of response that is meted out to our professionals in this country by government officials, hand-picked men who were brought into our cabinet by Prime Minister Philippe J. Pierre. That is the lack of respect, the lack of regard and disdain that they have for healthcare professionals and for the plight of you, the average St. Lucian. So, the time has come where we must reverse the situation that exists. In Castries, a highly densely populated area where we have over 60,000 people in that vicinity, we have merely the Entrepot Health Center. Some people go to the Leclerc Health Center, and it is my understanding that some of those facilities, such as Entrepot, is only operational part-time. It is not always fully functional. So that means that it is limited services that come out of those areas for those people. Those people there, some of whom are elderly, some of whom are incapacitated, most of whom are very sick, have to find their way at greater cost, effort, and discomfort to the polyclinic in Grosile, to the OKEU hospital further compounding the situation that exists at that hospital in terms of overcrowding and pressures on the staff that is there. That is unacceptable. We have the health center that by now something should have been done with it in Castries. We have to do what is necessary to reopen the Masha Health Center. We have the Victoria Hospital that is intended to become a polyclinic. Something has to be done about it. And in 3 years, nothing has been done. And we also, in the interim, to ease the burden on the services that are provided in Castries, the United Workers' Party administration solicited a field hospital from the Americans. If we cannot urgently put those facilities from a physical standpoint in a position to be open to the public, we can erect that field hospital somewhere in the Castries Basin where it will be accessible to the citizens of Castries, where they can go to and get the kind of healthcare services that they deserve. In the meantime, I call on the government to please take note that as a poor country, as a developing country, we reach out to partners and other friendly governments to make donations, to make contributions, to give grants to our country. When they do so, we must show our appreciation and gratitude by ensuring that we utilize, whether it is financial, whether it is physical or infrastructural, we have to show our appreciation by making the best possible use of those gifts that are given to us. I know for a fact that the hospital that is in storage right now, it is intended that it be set up periodically to prevent degradation, to prevent it from deteriorating and going to ruins, and so to ensure that the air conditioning, the generator, the equipment, and all of those things remain functional. That is not being done. So it is another waste of our resources. And so we call on the government to understand that they have a responsibility to the people of St. Lucia to step up and do the job that is expected of them. You promised very much. Honorable Prime Minister, you dubbed yourself as the most readied leader in this country. You dubbed yourself as a 6-star general. Step up to the plate. You asked for it. It was given to you. Do what you must do for the benefit of the people of St. Lucia. I want to inform you, sir, that you have been a dismal failure. Your administration has been an embarrassment and a threat to St. Lucians. And I say a threat to St. Lucians because not only have we seen a decline in our economic fortunes, compounded by your policies such as the implementation and imposition of a 2.5% levy on St. Lucians, but also you have presided over, according to the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association, the worst healthcare situation in the history of this country. So, you as Prime Minister, as Minister of National Security, you have presided over the worst situation as far as crime is concerned. For sure, under your watch, we have set records in terms of the number of homicides that exist. Only 2 days ago, in the last 2 days, you have heard of 2 or 3 more homicides. I know these are not concerns of yours. I know you're not going to hear a word from you. And like I always say, these things happen and you pretend as if it does not exist, as if you do not know. We don't hear a peep from our Prime Minister. Not a peep when these things happen. So, it is your responsibility, it is your job to do something about it. You asked for the job, you got the job, do the job. And we as St. Lucians cannot continue to perish in this way. When it comes to healthcare, we have loss of life. When it comes to crime situation, more loss of life. Even our road situations, which causes accidents, more loss of life. We cannot have a government that is so callous and uncaring that even in the face of the demise of its citizens, you refuse to act. We remember what happened during COVID. When you came in on the tail end of COVID. The United Workers' Party, like I said, handled the crisis. It was a global crisis that was never seen before, but we handled it admirably with competence and proficiency to the effect that only about 80 St. Lucians had lost their lives when we demitted office. Upon assuming office, sir, I want to remind you that all of a sudden, over 400 St. Lucians lost their lives. And that is not accidental. That is because of poor management, mismanagement of the healthcare system, mismanagement of the protocols that were already in place, that you allowed people to violate, that you encouraged people to violate to the extent that those who were punished for violating those protocols, one of your first acts was to expunge their records. And these are the wrong signals to send. We know that your government has been accused of having criminals in your ranks. What you have to do is not encourage more criminals at the societal level, but to clean up your government and set a good example to let St. Lucians know that we are a civilized country, we are a democratic country, we are a country that operates with rules, with order, and that at the end of the day, it's not a free-for-all. And that any country that has to be well run and not run into ruins like we are heading, like to be a dysfunctional state, we must observe decorum, we must observe protocols, we must observe the rule of law in this country. So, St. Lucians, since we have set some ultimatums for the government, we ask that, among other things, that the healthcare system be addressed. The 1st of November has come, the 1st of November has gone, and the government, in its normal, usual, disdainful, dismissive manner, has not paid any attention to the cries of St. Lucians. And so, St. Lucians, we are not going to continue to cry, we are going to take a stand. And so we are asking that the protest action begin with you. And I'm not asking you to take a political stance, I'm asking you to take a stance in the interest of your country, in the interest of your children, in the interest of your future. And so we are going to begin by indicating our disapproval, our disappointment with what obtains today and what passes as government by demonstrating that we are not satisfied by displaying a yellow ribbon on your car, on your homes, wherever you may, because the color, sorry, not yellow, but orange. I mean, I'm not into parties and political mood right now. It's a national effort that's going to take place. The color will be orange. As you know, orange is the color of protest, and we are going to show in a subtle way that we are not satisfied by flying our orange ribbons. If the government does not take heed, the actions will be escalated, and we will see more protest action.
The Public Relations Officer of the Opposition, UWP, Mr. Leonard Spider Mutut, bringing to a conclusion this evening's Newsmaker Live. But before that, we have the clip that peaked.
Do you have a boyfriend?
You want me to tell you how to get one?
Okay, tell me how to get one. How do I get one?
Okay, somebody has to be behind you, that's a boy. And you have to have another boy in front of you and ask the boy in front of you, do you want to be my boyfriend? And they say no. Then you turn to the other person and then you act disappointed, and then you'll ask them and then they'll say yes. That's how I got mine.
And this is where we conclude another edition of Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. Good night and see you next time.
I, Philip Joseph here, I would like to be judged as being the Prime Minister, not being judged as being part of a government.
Came into government that we had a manifesto and a vision and mission that had been approved by my party, by the highest body.
Basel 11 has not been in existence. 50 was...
Giant getting bazooka, spraying big on to knock out mosquitoes.
I have never had a joint account with anybody in my life. Not my ex-wife, not my children, nobody. And I will refer that to the Privileges Committee.
What about the culture of people getting into office and not being effective in taking...
What people become Prime Minister of St. Lucia have been the most ready
Let's do it this Wednesday, because if it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live.